Pimax Crystal Super or the Pimax Dream Air? I see a lot of you are struggling with this decision. Clearly, there's a reason for that. The Crystal Super, while being Pimax's new flagship VR headset and the most obvious alternative for VR gamers, enthusiasts, and simulator fans, this headset got suddenly kind of overrun by another next-gen VR headset announcement from Pimax last year. And that was the itsy-bitsy tiny small form factor Dream Air. By judging the Dream Air by its looks and design, by reading the specifications and considering its small form factor, anyone would say it's obviously a no-brainer, right? It's considerably smaller, it's much lighter, it looks super cool. According to people who tried it, it has similar image clarity to Crystal Super. So, who is even buying the Crystal Super at this point? Well, the majority of our audience and our customer base still do, and I totally get it. Personally, being not only a VR enthusiast since the beginning of time, but also a Pimax representative, I know exactly why so many of you go for the Super instead of awaiting Dream Air arrival. And this has almost nothing to do with expected release dates, potential delays, or estimated shipping times. It's about what Crystal Super is capable of, which Dream Air seemingly might not be. Now, hear me out. In this video, I'll give you a short story of my 1-week relationship with the Dream Air prototype back at the Pimax headquarters in May. My impressions, my thoughts, and my final verdict that probably won't be that what you really expected it to be. It might be a bit surprising to you hearing this from me, that a guy that stood there together with Yap, proudly announcing Dream Air and even a cheaper Dream Air SE version on that latest Pimax Connect event, that was Martin, the presenter. Now, let's hear what the VR enthusiast part of me has to say about it. So back in May, I was at the headquarters not only for the Dream Air SE announcement, but also to extensively test and evaluate Dream Air in its current state of development. While there, we also got visited by my old friends and some of my favorite VR YouTubers, Sebastian and Marker from MRTV, as well as Thomas and his wife Florida from Voodoo.de. They teamed up with me and Yab for the first ever Pimax Dream Air prototype hands-on experience. Well, most likely, you have already seen the MRTV and Voodoo.de impression videos about Dream Air, which turn out, not so surprisingly, very, very positive. Now, how about my opinion then? Over a period of a week of full testing, I think I got a fairly good overview of how Pimax Dream Air works and performs, at least at this stage of development back in April. So let's first go through some impressions, and then I'll follow up with my personal verdict. Let me repeat something important to avoid confusion. What you see here is an in-house prototype of Dream Air from back in April. Design-wise, it still doesn't even look like it's supposed to do compared to the product models and renderings in the announcements and on our website. But that's how it works with prototypes. The form factor and approximate size and weight will pretty much be the same on the final product. The Dream Air is supposed to have multiple integrated features upon release, such as 4 cameras running Pimax Slam 6-degree freedom tracking together with a pair of controllers, of course. Also Tobii eye tracking with the DFR support and motorized IPD adjustment. And then the self-tensioning strap, of course, which is a cool feature. These features are not integrated in this specific prototype sample. I heard from the team that later this month already, in late July, we will have a new sample ready, including most features operating, such as 6 degrees freedom tracking. The good news is that the optical stack or the optical engine, including the pancake lenses, the micro OLED panels, and the layers in between, are now fully aligned and functional. Software-wise, this headset is fully capable of properly rendering any SteamVR or OpenXR game, just like the other Pimax headsets. Because of the missing 6 DOF here, only using 3 DOF gyroscopic tracking for these tests, I was limited by the sparse amount of VR games and experiences I could choose to run with the Dream Air. Obviously, without camera 6 DOF tracking, controllers cannot be used. But the point of this video is to give you my thoughts on the image quality, optical clarity, field of view, brightness, and other visual aspects, especially compared to the Crystal Super. This also gives me a glimpse of general game performance. I set up a bunch of games that could run with a gamepad only, such as SteamVR environment, including the ROV test charts, Assetto Corsa Aircar, DCS World or Digital Combat Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, not 24 actually, because of network issues at the office. Then we had Lucky's Tales, Le Mans, and Vox Machine. All tests were performed on gaming desktop PCs powered by an RTX 4080 Super, Intel 13700K CPU, and 32GB of RAM. Let us begin with image quality and resolution. The Dream Air houses 2 Sony micro OLED panels rendering 3840 by 3552 pixels per eye. I notice it's natively rendering 3552 by 3840 pixels, and yet the panels are in fact rotated and render more pixels on the vertical side. Don't ask me why, but still it's the same resolution as advertised, which when combined gives us a total resolution of 7104 by 3840 pixels. That is beyond 27 million pixels in total. As expected, the lack of screen door effect, the sharpness, the clarity, and specifically the pixel fill factor are all amazing here. It feels pretty much like retina level sharpness, very similar to what Pimax Crystal Super is achieving with the 50 ppd lenses. We are using pancake lenses here and not aspheric glass lenses as we do on the Pimax Crystal Super. Still, these pancake lenses have a surprisingly big sweet spot, and the clarity was best I've ever seen on a small form factor VR headset. In fact, these lenses are like nothing else I've seen before in any other micro OLED VR headset. Not only are the pancake lenses bigger, but the way the lenses project the VR image from these Sony micro OLED panels is pretty mind-blowing. It might be Pimax's first approach creating a small form factor HMD, but what I see here feels very polished and, in my opinion, outperforms competition already at prototype stage, especially in terms of optical clarity, which is one of Pimax's main strengths, of course. The micro OLED panels produce rich and punchy colors, very high contrast levels with perfect OLED blacks, meanwhile giving surprisingly high peak brightness. In fact, this is the brightest micro OLED VR headset I've seen so far. The edge-to-edge clarity or the edge distortion profile still needs some work, and it's currently being in development. I have no doubts the team will get it corrected. Just look how well the Crystal Super distortion profile turned out. Not even MRTV Sebastian could see the distortion anymore. Furthermore, most common VR image-related flaws like Mura or glare or God rays are non-issues now. There is no Mura effect at all with these Sony panels, literally zero Mura. And while some level of glare or so-called God rays still can be spotted in the ROV glare test environment, it's minimal with the Dream Air. What's even more remarkable is that these Sony panels have an extremely high pixel fill factor or fill rate. What it means is how close the pixels are to each other and how little gap there is between each pixel. A small gap, which means a higher pixel fill factor, does in fact make the resolution look even higher than it is, despite Super QLED panels rendering a higher resolution in total, roughly 29 million pixels versus 27 million pixels on the Dream Air. But while the high fill factor on the Dream Air panels has its own advantage, making potential jagged edges look less obvious, I must admit that from my own impressions, The Crystal Super with its aspheric glass lenses gives me a bit sharper image with higher clarity than the Dream Air. As for the field of view then, well, you remember we had a slight confusion over there at the headquarters. This might be good to clarify again. The Dream Air prototype from April had a considerably wider field of view than it's actually supposed to have. It's a headset that is on paper promising 105 degrees of horizontal field of view. Meanwhile, during our test, the field of view turned out to stretch above 120 degrees horizontally. But yeah, before you jump out of your chair and start celebrating, no, this is not a wide field of view headset. The Dream Air will not offer that upon release. It will do 105 degrees horizontally, maybe slightly more, but definitely not even close to 120. With the Dream Air, Pimax wants to maximize the overlap rather than prioritize field of view, and somewhere between maybe 105 or 110 degrees provides the best balance without making big trade-offs on the overlap or binocular overlap. If you do expect an ultra-wide field of view, then Crystal Super is the way to go, where you get close to 130 degrees field of view out of the box and up to around 140 degrees with the new wide field of view QLED 50 ppd optical engine. So yeah, there is a difference in the field of view, and I'll tell you more about it in the verdict. Lastly, performance. Dream Air renders a resolution of 3840 by 3552 in 72 or 90 Hz. This is almost as high as Crystal Super resolution. Therefore, GPU requirements and recommendations will be very similar to both headsets. The first 2 days at the headquarters, I did some tests running Dream Air with a mini PC rig powered by a mobile RTX 4070 equivalent to a desktop 4060. I do not recommend this approach. It was not until I switched to an RTX 4080 Super desktop PC I started to enjoy the games and its performance. Especially with simulators like DCS World or Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 or 2024, I wouldn't use anything below RTX 4080. Even when playing simpler games like Lucky's Tale, pushing those high resolutions requires a better GPU. Of course, you can do 72Hz mode instead of 90 or enable that built-in upscale mode which other Pimax headsets also offer to gain some better frame rates. Also, using OpenXR plus quad views and FFR at this point without the eye tracking enabled in this prototype does help to maintain a rather stable 90 frames per second free flight in DCS. And with the eye tracking and DFR on Dream Air, once implemented and activated, it will help even further in supported games and simulators. But when neither of these techniques are available or supported in most other VR games, you must rely on raw, rasterized performance and high memory bandwidth. Therefore, go for an RTX 4080 or preferably higher like the 4090 I have over here if you can afford it, to avoid getting underwhelmed by performance issues. In my opinion, by investing in the Dream Air or the Crystal Super, you're already committed to high-end VR territory. You want to get blown away by its clarity and sharpness, right? If so, then there is nothing else than a native resolution and 90 Hz to settle for, which can only be powered and achieved by a high-end GPU. All in all, the Dream Air delivered way above my expectations at least, despite being a prototype. And the same thing can be heard from others after watching Voodoo D, Thomas, as well as MRTV Sebastian and Marco's impressions. I don't know how high the guys set their expectations in advance, but I could tell that all of us were pretty blown away. There is a huge potential here. Now, the high-end VR bar is set extremely high both with the Dream Air and the Crystal Super, and this is exactly what the VR industry needs for the upcoming years ahead. I don't say this every day, but as a true VR enthusiast, I'm truly proud of what I can showcase and present this year on behalf of Pimax, both regarding Crystal Super and the Dream Air. I feel like Pimax is taking its biggest leap this time. Now, getting back to the topic we touched on at the beginning, what should you buy, the Dream Air or the Crystal Super? Well, I cannot make that decision for you, but I can give you my personal point of view. And here's the thing, I'm totally sold on the Crystal Super. I've been using it for many months now, almost daily. I've been showcasing it for thousands of visitors in total, mainly at CES 2025, but also at Le Mans event in France and MRTV Showcase in Germany. According to me and most others I've spoken to, Crystal Super is a VR headset outperforming everything else currently available on the market. It's now stable and it's reliable. For reference, we only had 3 Crystal Supers at Le Mans running non-stop for 16 hours straight, every day for 7 days in 35 degrees summer heat and sweat. Same for the 4 Crystal Lights running next to the Super Rigs. In total, more than 4,000 people visited our booth that week. And none of them even crashed, none of them failed, and all 3 samples of the Crystal Super still works perfectly today. And by the way, here's one of them. While the Dream Air did in fact exceed my expectations back in May, I do somehow feel that the small form factor is a new territory for Pimax, which doesn't give me the same level of confidence. At least not yet. Secondly, the field of view. I love clarity and both headsets shine regarding that factor. But the wide field of view of Crystal Super is just on another level. It's the best field of view by a good margin and I don't want to sacrifice it, especially now after testing the 140-degree ultra-wide 50 ppd module. I just cannot go back to 105 degrees or even 110. There's no chance. Any smaller form factor or cooler design, even OLED blacks, won't justify huge step back in field of view for me. Additionally, while the lenses are outstanding in Dream Air, they still cannot compare to the aspheric glass lenses of the Super. Especially edge clarity. Aspheric lenses are just unbeatable right now, and with the perfect distortion profile Super has right now, I feel that the Dream Air has a long way to go until it reaches the same level. The glass lenses of the Super also allow for a considerably brighter image, which is super important for flight simulator enthusiasts like me. And then also take the modularity of Super into the consideration, being able to switch or upgrade the optical engine, replace the headphones or use the optional Pimax hand tracking module, and the mixed reality faceplate coming to Super. There's just so much modularity I don't want to miss out by moving over to Dream Air. So, to summarize my point, the field of view, the optical clarity and its distortion-free image, the peak brightness levels and the modularity is all better on the Crystal Super, hands down. Honestly, I don't think these 2 headsets will even compete with each other. They are so different and aimed at completely different audiences. Crystal Super is perfect for flight sim and racing simmers or VR enthusiasts who wants the best visuals and the most immersive VR experience possible. The Dream Air can of course also be a simmer's headset, but it's best for casual gamers and people who prefer a lower weight, small form factor headset with high-end VR clarity and visuals, and maybe not the widest field of view. So I am happy that both headsets will exist simultaneously, and the cheaper Dream Air SC version might attract a lot of mainstream casual VR gamers who can live with a slightly lower resolution. Soon, there is a headset for each kind of VR geek. Personally, I'm the Crystal Super geek, and I will gladly keep rocking my Super probably a long time after Dream Air releases. But how about you? Let me know what you think, guys. Are you going for the Crystal Super or the Pimax Dream Air, and why? That's it for this time. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.